Bad Mind TV, big up, Wagwan. Yeah, man. Obviously, another video today. It's based on yesterday's video. My last upload was about obviously people on YouTubers bashing Islam. Seem to be American and British podcasts getting together and slewing the thing. You get me? So I'm not gonna have that. Knowing that there's people in my community, in the black community, that are part of that religion that don't do the things what they're on about, and have never been accused of it. Following up, there's never been no stings and that. And then obviously at the end of my video I mentioned a guy that had a channel, and I couldn't find it at the end of the video. I found it now, and I kind of wanted to play some of it and obviously narrate obviously what I'm showing you. So he's just sitting down speaking on YouTube, and his name is, so that before I start, because I have to give his name still, his name's Shahid Bolson. Yeah, Shahid Bolson, and his channel's called the Middle Nation. Yeah, Middle Nation. So that's his channel. And so yeah, I'm gonna play some of his clip now. This is Bolson, Middle Nation.
When you talk about these so-called grooming gangs in the United Kingdom, let's be clear first of all. What you're talking about are British men abusing British girls in Britain. We're literally not talking about any sort of a phenomenon taking place in the Muslim world. So this very clearly has to do with your culture, not ours. It has to do with your society, not ours. It has to do with your values, not ours. You corrupt your own people, and you promote degeneracy, and you promote predation among your own people, and that's a fact. This obviously has nothing to do with our culture. To say that it has anything to do with Muslim culture it makes as much sense as saying that fish and chips is a part of Islamic culture because Muslims in the UK eat fish and chips. No. In fact, in most of our countries, the only people that you'll find doing these kinds of things are Western tourists. And of course, we all know that this is what you all used to do writ large in our lands when you were colonizing our lands. So this is a Western problem. And then the apparent cover-up that they're talking about. All because they said that they were afraid that if they pursued these cases, that they'd then be accused of racism, or they'd be accused of Islamophobia, or what have you. Again, this is a Western problem, because you don't take justice seriously. In your countries, justice takes a backseat to politics, and your politics are completely crippled by a lack of any sort of moral clarity, or any sort of integrity. And I mean, let's be honest, your society will always err on the side of sexual depravity. You and I both know that your politicians have no incentive whatsoever to shine a spotlight on sexual predation, because most of them are perpetrators themselves. And your own history of extreme racism, which is inarguable, your culture of bigotry, collides now with your desire to look like you're not racist and like you're not bigots. So you're in a bit of a quandary in dealing with criminal cases involving non-whites. Since your whole criminal justice system, so-called, has always been little more than an ethnic cleansing program. So you're in a conflict because you are not in reality what you want people to believe you are. Mm-hmm. So you always fumble, when you're trying to do what people would do who actually are what you pretend to be. You see what I mean? Because it's not your nature. It's not natural to you. So because you're not genuinely fair, you're not genuinely objective, you're not genuinely unbiased and just, your impersonation of fairness, your impersonation of objectivity, your impersonation of justice is always conspicuously flawed. Exactly. It's like a child who's trying to look like a grown-up, and he's struggling to know how to tie a necktie. Or he's tying knots in his shoelaces because he just knows that shoelaces are supposed to be tied, but he never actually learned how to do it. This is you, but that's the West. Especially when you're talking about matters of justice or human rights or what have you. When Britain talks about grooming gangs, it reminds me of that old story of a pirate who got arrested, and he was brought before the king, and he said to the king, there's no difference really between you and me, except that I only have one ship, and so you get to call me a pirate, whereas you have a navy, so you're an empire. But actually we operate the same, because Western so-called civilization is actually nothing but one big gigantic grooming gang. the whole culture, the whole system.
But they want to point the
Systemic
sections of
grooming and sexualization of young women in that culture is a fixture of the culture. It's a structural feature of Western culture. It's evolved over centuries. It's deeply intertwined in their whole economic and social system. Starting from their deeply misogynistic past until today, Western culture has very long normalized the hypersexualization of young women and treating them as less than human beings with inherent dignity. It treats them as objects for consumption. Studies show that by the age of 8, girls in the West are already internalizing societal messages about their appearance, about how their appearance is their primary source of value in their society. According to a 2021 report by the American Psychological Association, the sexualization of girls in the media, from music videos to advertising, has profound negative psychological effects on those girls, leading to depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, on and on and on. Now, would that be the case if the messaging in your media was that they were receiving was a positive message? No, this culture of grooming is not accidental. It's perpetuated through systemic forces that prioritize profit over morality.
Yes.
From industries like fashion to industries like pornography that actively target younger demographics, normalizing imagery that blurs the line between childhood and adulthood. This is normal for you. For instance, the rise of platforms like OnlyFans, which saw a 70% increase in user signups during the COVID-19 pandemic. It reflects how economic desperation and culturalization push young women, some barely out of high school, into commodifying their own bodies just for survival. In other words, just like a pimp, you engineer the vulnerable into capitulating with their own exploitation. Culturally, you engineer that. You create a society, you create an economic system that punishes everyone, and then you offer a reward to young women if they capitulate with self-degradation. Because you've already groomed them from childhood to accept that their bodies and their beauty and their sexual attractiveness and their sexual utility to men are their greatest assets in the commercial market. This is what you teach them. So then you close off all other financial opportunities, economic opportunities, and then you open the avenues for sexual exploitation, and they'll go along with it.
Yes.
So how is that not grooming on a mass scale, writ large? The West's historical tolerance for adult relationships with underage girls.
Can you hear what this man's explaining? He's basically saying that the countries that we live in, are systemically aimed at sexual immorality. Like they're aimed for you to be for sexual depravity here. Did you hear the way he explained it as well? He says get women from young ages, cut off all like viable work for them to succeed, but open the doors for them to use their sexuality. And that's exactly what you see. Many a times have I met girls at uni who strip to get through uni, because they close the door a little bit there, make it expensive, but open the door for you to make money there to take your clothes off. This man's very educated, man. I'm going to continue listening. I hope you're enjoying this.
Is undeniable, and it's a cultural pathology of the West. As recently as the 20th century, legal ages for marriage in most Western countries were shockingly low. In the United States, it was legal in several states for girls as young as 12
I said
to
this
marry
yesterday.
with parental consent. Even today, child marriage remains technically legal in several U.S. states. This permissiveness is not confined to the past by any stretch of the imagination. Child marriage remains legal in several states. As recently as the 20th century, legal ages for marriage in most Western countries were shockingly low. In the United States, it was legal in several states for girls as young as 12 to marry with parental consent. Even today, child marriage remains technically legal in several U.S. states. This permissiveness is not confined to the past by any stretch of the imagination. Jeffrey Epstein, he had a sprawling network of abuse and exploitation that was all enabled by some of the most powerful individuals in Western society. Why, it's a chilling testament to how normalized and how institutionalized sexual predation is in your societies. The fact that Epstein was able to operate with impunity for decades, well, it speaks volumes about the complicity of your cultural and your legal systems and your institutions. I mean, economic conditions in the West exacerbate this exploitation. You can't deny it. With the cost of living skyrocketing and social safety nets eroding across the West, many young women find themselves turning to sex work, so-called.
Yes.
Not out of choice, but out of necessity. You know, according to the what's called the Polaris Project, the U.S. has one of the highest rates in the world for sex trafficking, with an estimated 200,000 incidents occurring annually, every year. These victims are overwhelmingly young, overwhelmingly girls, often lured into exploitation by promises of financial stability or for opportunities for a better life. That's grooming. And then, like I said, you've got the platforms like OnlyFans. That just further illustrates the point. It's marketed as empowering for women. These platforms are, in reality, digital brothels, where economic desperation and societal and cultural grooming converge. You know, a 2022 study found...
My people listening to this, yeah? Can you hear where he's going? Yeah? Only the educated can listen to stuff. Like, only people who want to absorb education like a sponge and knowledge. You understand me? Listen to the man. He's talking the real sense for 2025.
And that 50% of content creators on OnlyFans joined due to financial hardship.
Yes.
With many reporting feelings of regret and exploitation, despite the promise of financial autonomy. That's grooming. You groomed them for that.
Yeah.
Pornography is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that plays a central role in the normalization of sexual exploitation in the West. You know, the average age of first exposure to pornography in the West is now just 11 years old.
Yeah.
This early exposure skews young people's perception of healthy relationships, and it perpetuates harmful stereotypes about consent and about power dynamics in intimacy. A 2019 study by the UK's Children's Commissioner found that nearly half of all boys between the ages of 11 and 16 who consume pornography actually did believe that it was a realistic representation of sexual relationships. Now, those young boys, those are your boys. Those are your boys in the UK. They're going to be approaching young girls with that mentality. Well, that's grooming. You're grooming the boys and you're grooming the boys to groom the girls.
Yes.
That's your whole culture. Pornography increasingly caters to themes that fetishize youth.
That is the culture where we live, yeah? That's what you only have to go on TikTok to see it, man. You get me? I closed my TikTok account down today. Cause it's weird on there, you get me? It's proper weird. You go on there, you go on the lives, cause I promote, obviously, Bad Mind TV. And I see there was a young girl in there today. Everyone's saying to, where's your parents? He's gone, oh, they're not here. I'm on my own. You understand what I'm saying to you? And I know about that kind of living there and growing up and parents gone out and you're in the house on your own. You get me? So I actually reported the account. I reported it to say, it said, what's it say? It give you an option to say, minor neglect or abuse, yeah. So neglect is a form of abuse, so I reported that still, car there's too much kids online without no adults, yeah, and they're putting on makeup and trying to do makeup at fucking 10 years old. It's ridiculous, and this is what the grooming is. And you know what, when you report, the reason why I'm coming off there, Snapchat came back to me and said there's nothing wrong with what I reported. That's why I'm coming off there. Then this man's right. The group, they're allowing them to be there and act like women with the fucking makeup to thingy. So technically, when this country and these two countries and whatever pointing fingers at other sections, they need to know that their whole demographic is paedophilic. End of.
And power imbalances. You know, you've got categories like teens and stepdaughters. These dominate platforms like that. That just reinforces the grooming culture by normalizing the sexualization of minors. And incest. The impact of this consumption is profound on your young people. It influences their individual behavior and it influences societal norms. This is all reflective of the fundamentally amoral and immoral society of your culture, of your so-called civilization. Your whole society is a society of grooming and predation. That's your whole system. You know, prostitution, which you euphemize as sex work in the West, is another manifestation of this. Well, it's marketed by feminists and liberals as some form of empowerment. The reality is far more grim. According to a 2018 study by the International Labor Organization, over 70% of women who are in prostitution in Western countries report that they have histories of sexual abuse, of poverty, and of coercion. These are not empowered choices. These are survival strategies born out of a systemic failure. It's a system of grooming. Like I said, you've got human trafficking, and that fuels that industry. The Global Slavery Index estimates that 403,000 people are living in modern-day slavery in the United States alone. Many of them have been trafficked for sexual exploitation. The commodification of women's bodies is not just a cultural issue, it's a cornerstone of an exploitative economic system and of a culture that has never valued women as full human beings, but only as objects for men to use at will.
Yeah.
Western media, obviously, popular entertainment, all of those industries play a pivotal role in sustaining this type of sick culture. Films, music, and advertising, the advertising industry, marketing, and so forth, they glamorize youth and sexual availability while ridiculing modesty and ridiculing chastity. Pop stars are routinely marketed as sex symbols from a very young age, setting a standard for young women to try to emulate. The 2020 Netflix controversy surrounding that film, Cuties, is a stark example of how the line between art and exploitation is deliberately blurred.
Well, they say
I mean, I don't know if there's even one single young female.
There's a saying, art imitates life. So based on his statement there, it kind of goes in line with that, and art imitates life is the same.
Celebrity who came through the Mickey Mouse Club, who isn't mental today. I'm telling you, the Western culture of grooming and of exploitation is not just some sort of a social ill. This is a system of oppression that targets the most vulnerable among the population. It targets the most vulnerable. It's a system that conflates liberation with commodification. It disguises exploitation as empowerment. And it normalizes the sexualization of youth under the guise of so-called progressive values. Well, right now, you've got over 100,000 prostitutes in the UK, in your country where you're so mad about grooming. Around half of those prostitutes are in London alone. Well, who do you think groomed them? Because according to studies, at least 80% of them got into prostitution through grooming and through coercion of some kind or another. The number of women who are going into prostitution in the UK has skyrocketed since the economic crisis and since inflation took off. Tell me that's not systemic grooming. Culturally and economically, you groom your people for this. I mean, the profound hypocrisy that runs through deep through the veins of Western society is stunning. It's a breathtaking level of dishonesty, this performative outrage over so-called grooming gangs, the Pakistani grooming gangs, while the overwhelming majority of these types of crimes are committed by white Britons.
Yes.
That's a fact.
That's a fact.
85% of grooming cases, grooming gang offenses, are carried out by white.
Listen to me. You see when you go to jail, and and sometimes what it is, there's an escort movement for sex offenders get their own movement around the prison. So when it's time for them to move, it's called lockdown. They'll lock all the normal people, normal criminals, who say, away, and then we can see out the window, and there'll be a sea of them, probably 200 of them walking, or 150 Nazis, 150 like sex offenders walking, yeah, with the screws going for their, going for gym, and they get their little own time to do their thing because they can't mix with man. And you know what the funny thing, when they're walking, you look, I would say it's 97% white. You get 1 and 2 black man, you can see 1 and 2 Asian. So in that group, I'd say only when you get 100 of them together, yeah, I'll be honest, you'll only see like 11 out of the 100 that are multicultural to 6, because I've counted, because I've always wanted to look and see how much of my people's walking with them, yeah, and it's never no more than 4 or 5, literally, you understand me? So, like that, it's you lot's thing, it's a Caucasian thing. Stop pointing the finger, it's your lot's thing, it's your demographic, you built the place on that, that's what you built it on. Sexual demographic is what the Caucasian lands, what we live on, they push that energy. It's your thing.
Men. In fact, data from 2023 shows that 83% of child sexual abuse suspects were white, while only 2.7 were of Asian descent. Gang offenses are carried out by white men. In fact, data from 2023 shows that 83% of child sexual abuse suspects were white.
Hear that?
While only 2.7 were of Asian descent.
There you go.
Grooming is your culture, not ours. If anyone whose heritage is from the Muslim world, or from Asia, or what have you, If any of those types of people are involved in these very British, very Western activities, well, these are just the ones who have successfully assimilated to your culture, that's all. I mean, look at the numbers. In 2023, out of 1,884 child...
He said assimilated into your culture. That means that what he's basically saying is anyone who's lives in this part of the world who may have committed these type of offences has been groomed themselves by the country that they're in. What's pushed at them so much, and then they become vulnerable. So some people it's like that friend at school. You smoke weed, they don't. Every day you go take a drag of this, and they go nah, and that one day them take a draw, yeah, and then from there they smoke with you every day. And I think that's what he's trying to say. He's saying that some people are easily led, easily manipulated, yeah. So that's that falls in line with that. Is the energy's pushed so much that some people are weak and end up going at things, is what he's saying.
Sexual abuse suspects, 1,623 were white. That's an overwhelming 85%. The data tells us that in the first 3 quarters of 2024, there were 144 white suspects compared to just 31 British Pakistani suspects in group-based child sexual exploitation cases. That's grooming gangs.
Numbers don't lie.
85% were white. So in reality, while you're clamoring on and on and on about a so-called cover-up of the British Pakistani grooming cases, in fact, you only want to talk about these cases as a way to cover up your own mass-scale criminality.
That's right.
You want to talk about them because you want to hide the fact that you do these things more than anyone.
It's true.
So you're using this talk of a cover-up precisely to cover up your own crimes, which is absolutely familiar to us. It's so familiar.
You see, to verbalize what he's saying is not easy, to without causing offense. He's very intelligent person, very, very intelligent to a high level.
That is predictable. That's how fundamentally unserious you are in your society about protecting women, how fundamentally unserious you are about protecting children. This is how deeply unserious you are about justice, and really how deeply committed you are as a culture, as a society, as a so-called civilization to never change, to never evolve, and to never civilize. Honestly, it's absolutely the case that whatever the West says, if you want to understand the world, then you have to take whatever they say and realize that the opposite is the reality. Truly.
True.
And every time they make an accusation, it's nothing but a confession. They speak in backward code, It's not that they don't tell you what they're doing. It's just that instead of saying that they're doing it, they'll say that you're doing it.
That's right.
So that's how you can always know what they're doing, because they'll accuse you of doing the thing that they're doing. And anytime they say that things are that the opposite is the reality. Truly. And every time they make an accusation, it's nothing but a confession. They speak in backward code.
That's right.
It's not that they don't tell you what they're doing. It's just that instead of saying that they're doing it, they'll say that you're doing it. So that's how you can always know what they're doing, because they'll accuse you of doing the thing that they're doing. And anytime they say that things are a certain kind of way, well, you know that it's the opposite of whatever they said. Just read everything that they say backwards. Just read everything that they say backwards, and you'll understand what's really being said. It's like those, remember when they used to get those, find those satanic messages? That they would play backwards. When they would play a song backwards, they would find satanic messages in the lyrics.
Yes.
Well, that's every pronouncement that the West ever makes. Just play it backwards, and you'll hear the satanic message that they're really telling you. So when they say, for example, that they're outraged because Asian men are grooming and raping minors, what they're really saying is that white British men are grooming and raping minors, and that they're happy about it. Just like when they say that Muslims are terrorists, what they are really saying is that they are terrorizing Muslims.
Yeah.
That's how it works. That's how you translate them.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how you translate Western diatribes.
Well done.
Just run it backwards, which is completely consistent with their whole backwards culture. Your so-called civilization is a grooming civilization. It's an exploitative civilization, abusive, predatory, and sociopathic. On the micro level and on the macro level. You ruin your own people, and you corrupt your own people, and you ruin and you corrupt any people who come to live with you. And you try to ruin and corrupt the people in the countries where you colonize. And it's a shame. You don't give your own people a chance. Wallahi, it's a shame. You don't give your own people a chance. You don't give your own people the tools. In fact, you actively deprive them of the tools to be decent, to be moral, to be principled, to be good. You actually indoctrinate your people, and you brainwash your people, and you groom your people into degeneracy and perversion and moral relativism. And you can't possibly hate a people more than that. You can't possibly hate people more than when you encourage them and you coerce them into destroying themselves.
That's right.
Into destroying their own souls. Why, it's inhuman. And then you add insult to injury by gaslighting your whole society. I swear, it's like you're choking someone and calling it CPR. It's diabolical. And that's the only real reason why you're going on and on and on about this minuscule slice of your national criminality that's being committed by non-white British people. Because as long as you can fool Muslims into trying to so-called defend ourselves against your accusations, well, then you never have to defend yourselves and your indefensible behavior. But I'm telling you, this addiction to avoidance of accountability is not going to serve you well in the long term.
No way.
It's not going to serve you well.
Wrong and strong.
Just as it doesn't work for individuals, it's not going to work for a nation. It doesn't work for nations, ultimately. I mean, maybe that's why you all talk about colonizing outer space, because you've completely ruined your reputation on this planet.
Yes.
Your whole society is a rape gang. I'm sorry to tell you.
That's right.
And the entire global south can testify to that. And you are the most prolific serial criminals in history. So spare me your conspicuously selective pretend moral outrage. These crimes are not only not connected in any way whatsoever to Islam or to Muslims, they are very Western crimes. And the truth is that in Islam, we know very well how to deal with people who commit these kinds of crimes. So if you want to extradite your criminals over to us, to our lands for punishment, well, we'll take care of it. We know how to take care of it. Just make sure that you send all of them. Send the whole lot of them. Don't just send the ones that you get mad about. Send us your...
Yes. So that was Shahid Bolson. And obviously, we kind of have the same type of thinking. I like that. I listened to it a while ago, you know. It's 2 weeks old now. He's at 108k views in 2 weeks. Very good views. And obviously, I listened to it and then already had my own thing. And then I'm listening to a lot of people. So basically, that was played, yeah, to support what I'm saying, yeah. No white people can't point no finger. No Caucasians can't point no fingers at nobody. Yeah, at no sections. Simple as that. You can't. Yeah. According to what Mr. Bolson saying, yeah, your whole demographic is based on sexual deviancy. Yeah. And I can see it as a grown man. So what I would say is, because of that, you have no right, yeah, to be Christians, don't have no right, yeah, especially white people don't have no right to be pointing their finger at people, calling them this and telling them they're that, when you yourselves created that energy. No one never knew about that before Uno started them thing there. You never hear what the man said. You never hear what I said. I found out my own information, you know. And then I heard that him say that when I first watched this, I didn't hear him say about the 12-year-olds and they could get married. And you know that? I never heard that. I only heard it when I'd researched it myself. So this, you know, like, everybody pushed that agenda, let people know. You understand me? Let people know, yeah, that Caucasian people had laws to marry 12 and 8 and 7-year-olds, yeah. So they ain't got no chat to chat. I don't want to hear nothing from none of yous. And I'm going to push these videos and push them on all those Islamophobes YouTubers channels. Yeah, I'm pushing it. I'm pushing the agenda. Cause basically, it's exactly like Mr. Bolson said. They seem to what they're doing. They call you what they're doing. Yeah. And now I'm not saying that there's not people in Asian communities doing these things, but as I said, the maths don't add up. 80% he said were Caucasian, over 23 or something percent Asian. That's nowhere near. So you're using you're scapegoating the few to absorb the masses. That's what you're doing. You're pointing the finger at the few to kind of blend away the mass of people that are really doing the thing. And this man's, you know, respect to Mr. Bolson still. Assalamu alaikum, and what, and you know how it go. But yeah, boom. Yeah, I like his analogy, and I wanted to share that. Yesterday I was gonna do it. I didn't get a chance to share it, so I managed to share that with you now. I know it was a little while, but some of my videos are longer than this anyway. And and I hope that you found it educational and of the times, and maybe gave you a different aspect to the country what you live in. You know, that you might not have seen the UK like that now until you've watched this video and the one I done yesterday. Then you might get a look and start looking at things a bit differently and say, you know what? Yeah, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to open up pineal glands around here. We're trying to get third eyes open, yeah? So, Bad Mind TV, one order, respect, pick up my subscribers.